So this year I've decided that for the very first time I'm going to be entering the Foundations Revealed contest. I'm very excited. The theme is Once Upon a Time, and for my inspiration I've chosen the Brothers Grimm Cinderella. And in the story she's described as wearing dresses of gold and silver, lots of embroidery, each one more spectacular than the last, and I just really want a shiny princess dress. And the style of dresses I usually think of when I think about fairy tales is things like the Renaissance. All of the gowns are so flowy and romantic, they're embroidered, you wear lots of jewelry. What could be more perfect? And dresses like this are also often featured in fairy tale book illustrations, like a lot of the ones I grew up with had these beautiful gowns in them. And so this is the sketch of the dress I would like to make. And I'm super excited about this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never really done the Renaissance before, so this is going to be my sort of fantasy interpretation of how things might have been made at the time. The first step in the project was to make my Camicia to wear under the dress. I swear I spent more time trying to learn how to pronounce that instead of actually sewing. I used Festive Attire's blog post as a general guide and adjusted their pattern measurements to suit the shape I wanted. First step after cutting was to attach my gussets to each of the sleeves. I used 1/2-inch seam allowance for all of my pieces. I flat felled all of my seams. I find this is a good sturdy finish and also keeps my seams from getting too bulky since this is worn underneath something else. I laid out all my sleeves and body pieces to make sure I was attaching everything in the right spot, and it takes up my entire floor. I attached my front and back pieces 2 inches above the edge of the sleeves to connect everything at the neckline. Next, I sewed up the side seams, running from the hem all the way up to the ends of the sleeves. After stitching, I pressed my seams and trimmed one side for the flat felled finish. I did have to clip my seam allowance near the gussets to get my seams to lie flat, but I think it worked out pretty well. So, I was a little curious how things were going and decided to try it on, and I look ridiculous. I also discovered I can fit my entire boyfriend inside with me. It is that roomy. After all my pieces were put together, I ran 2 gathering threads along the neckline and pulled it down to the size I wanted. So I didn't film working on sleeves last night because it was quite a bit too dark to film, but here's where things are. I gathered the sleeves into these little cuffs, which will button closed once I get some buttons. I also have the neckline gathered, but not finished yet. So I want a nice round neckline on my shift, so I'm making bias tape, but my piece was too small to cut a lot out of. So I cut a whole bunch of short pieces and I've seamed them together, which will work just as well. After sewing the bias along the neckline on one side, I folded it over and finished it off by hand on the inside with a slip stitch. After the sleeves were finished, I added a little bit of lace to the cuffs. I machine gathered the lace, pinned it in place, and stitched it down by machine. I had exactly enough of this lace with nothing left over. After attaching my buttons, I made little thread button loops using a chain stitch. After the button loops were done, I used some of this silver embroidery thread to couch over my cotton thread to make it a little fancier. And there you have it, fancy finished sleeve cuffs. Lastly, I finished the hem with some pretty cotton lace from the stash. So happy with how this came out. I can't wait to make the rest of the dress. Stay tuned if you want to see more.